Hello,
What's up?
this is AirGo.
It is indeed.
I'm Kiss.
I'm Damon.
And what we do here and what we've been doing for damn near a decade
Yep.
is reshape culture for the more liberatory and creative.
And we are so excited. We in a brand new studio. And so we're kicking it off with one of our OGs and one of our dearest loved ones, the one and only Bill Ayers.
Yeah, Bill was on the show many, many years ago, and that was really the beginning of a deeply beautiful friendship and partnership. The kinds of care and love and thought partnership he's poured into us over the years has been so beautiful, and it feels very reciprocal in this conversation to get to have him back on, see what he's been thinking about, and see how he's making sense of this time.
Bill is an educator and professor and author of many wonderful books and texts. And he's also just like a down spirit for the movement, a member of Students for Democratic Society, also known as SDS back in the 60s, the Weathermen, the Weather Underground. If you want to learn more about Bill's story, definitely go check out the audio-only episode of AirGo with Bill. Also check out the episode with his wonderful partner, Bernadine Dorn. But really, if you want to do a deep dive on this wonderful legacy, you got to check out Mother Country Radicals, produced by Zane Dorn, everywhere you get your podcast. And Bill's podcast, Under the Tree, which we helped him develop.
Under the Tree, a seminar on freedom, is like a beautiful ode and poetic practice of figuring out how do we build more freedom. It's also available wherever you get your podcasts. And as is a lot of the things we make are available wherever you
check us out.
Wherever you get your pods. So make sure you subscribe to AirGo. Make sure you do that both on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, but also on our YouTube now as we build that side of it out. You can find all of our work at resparemedia.com. Anything else you want to plug?
I think that's all I got.
Let's
get to it with the homie.
All right, let's hop into it here at our brand new Goose Island Studios with Bill Ayers.
Yeah. We are here. We are excited. We are kicking off this brand new chapter of this AirGo life in the new Goose Island Studios. How you feeling, Daniel?
I'm wonderful.
I'm excited, and we're excited because we have truly one of our dearest, most beloved, closest people to our hearts in the entire world, the one, the only, Bill Ayers is in the building. Burr, 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 burr. Yeah. Bill.
Guys, calm down. I had no idea you did that. I don't think I've ever seen you do that. That was the sound effects were incredible.
You thought that we were bringing in a
I
horse
thought you had a tape
on a regular basis. Yeah.
No,
Watch this. You want to see this jungle cat just come out of nowhere?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's Damon's pride and joy, and I think it should be. I think that's really an impressive
I'm
feat.
amazed, and I'm so excited to be here in your studio.
Yeah.
The first recording you've done in the new studio.
How you like it? Is it cozy? Is it comfy?
It's
over
very
there?
cozy.
This looks good.
But you
Do you
told me
feel-
it was Goose Island, and I said to you, sorry, I'm not with my shotgun. There are apparently geese migrating right above us.
Oh, you're trying to make a roast, is what
Yeah,
you're
I
saying.
want dinner.
Well, that doesn't come with the recording. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But we're very happy to have you
Thank
here.
you.
It's been a minute since we were on mic together, but this relationship has really grown and evolved, and I think it's a good opportunity to start with the same two-part question we always do. It's a question centered around time in this hour, this day, this season, this lifetime. How is the world treating you, and how are you treating the world, Bill Ayers?
I love that question. I do a lot of free writes in my teaching and in my podcast, and I've used that one because I stole it from you, and thank you very much.
It's
shared
it's
use.
Creative Commons.
The thing I think is interesting thinking about it today, I think again that one of the contradictions I live with is that my personal happiness stands in stark contrast with a world in flames and in pain. So I often feel, my privileges, my good fortune, some of my choices have been, extraordinary. And I also feel every time I confront that question is I could be doing more. There's more to do. And what's demanded of us is so monumental. And I'm trying, I'm failing, I'm trying again, I'm failing again. I hope I'm failing better. But, that's the dialectic. The other thing, though, that I think of this time as you ask this question is, in a way, it pushes us toward an individual answer. So how's the world treating me? How's it treating humanity? How are we doing? And the world's treating us like shit.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a harder question for some people, and then easier for others. It's interesting you name that because we've observed over the 10 years of asking people that opening question, the kind of ebbs and flows of who feels comfortable answering it, and owning up to the goodness in their life, and then the like performance. Not that sounds negative. The like discomfort of naming that there's joy, kind of ebbs and flows for people.
It's interesting. I mean, I think there's a social dimension to it, which is kind of what I'm saying. But I also think that we make a mistake when we deny joy, when we deny our own happiness. That's also a victory for the anti-human.
Yeah.
I mean, we are human, and in the most dire circumstances, humanity finds a way to find love, to find beauty, to find generosity. I mean, we do that, and we do it in Gaza. We did it in Europe during the Holocaust. We do it in every possible situation. So we shouldn't be so narcissistic to say it's me and only me. You know, it's joy is important, and joy is even resistance.
You're jumping in super Bill Ayers to start us off. This is perfect. These are the exact questions we wanted to ask, because you talk about this like responsibility towards joy, and you also talk about like feeling like you have to do more, and both of those things just like radiate off of you, of like you are a joyful person, and you're like always have this energy to keep showing up and keep being present and keep participating. And you've faced 60 to 70 years of state violence and oppression and harmful systems, and you have built relationships and grieved with and connected yourself to the folks that are, not only frontlining the resistance, but, bearing the brunts of those impacts. But still, you sit here with this like clarity towards this responsibility of joy. And for you, how much of that feels innate, and like you have special Bill bones that like allow you to be so joyful?
Like a Space Jam special sauce situation.
Or is this a wisdom or a practice or an intentionality that you had to like learn or struggle to get to?
I think that, in many ways, I think that it's a genetic flaw. I mean, my mother was a Pollyanna, and I have many, many moments with my mother. But decades ago, I was taking care of her. She'd broken her ankle, and she asked me innocently enough.
I crossed her up. She tried to guard me. Tell mom to stay off the wing.
And she asked me very innocently, "What is this thing I've heard of called global warming?" And I gave her a very mild description. I didn't want to scare the shit out of the old lady, so I just told her a little bit. And she looked at me very coldly and said, "I'm sorry I asked." Because you asked. Now you might have to do something. And I think that's a very common. One of the things that is common in humanity is try to push away the things that you don't want to deal with, you don't want to see. And privilege is the great anesthetizing drug. I mean, you can't see from your perch of privilege, whether it's racial privilege or gender or sexual identity or immigrant status. You can't quite see what's over that hill, but you have to try. And so for me, it's partly, seriously, I got it from my mom. I could see the dark side of the world. She couldn't. But I'm not willing to be in the thrall of it. And that's partly a choice. It's partly, as I say, a genetic flaw. It's partly that it really is true that because I don't know what's coming, I choose to decide that I want to imagine that we can get there. We can have a revolution. We can make change. We can bring about abolition. I choose that. And it's true. I go to bed every night disappointed and self-critical, and I wake up every morning and say, maybe today. So I woke up this morning and I said, gosh, I can't wait to see Damon and Daniel. I can't wait to see if today we can overthrow capitalism. And by the way, you mentioned that we show up a lot, and we do. We try to show up. We move a little more slowly. Daniel calls us early leavers.
That's my line.
Oh, that's your line. Okay. I got you guys confused.
It happens all the time.
But early leavers. So you see us, and then we think we're sneaking out, but you see us because we go to bed at 8.
You did it at my wedding. I caught you in the staircase.
That's right. You were in the staircase, and you caught us. But we are early leavers. But part of the reason I show up, and this is a little bit of an exaggeration, but not much, we show up because I don't know which thing or which event or which moment is going to be the kickoff moment. I don't know. And there are many. And so I want to show up. I want to build my muscles of resistance. I want to be part of something. And one of the ways you keep active is you stay with the young. One of the great things about being a teacher is I've always been with young people, and they bring new energy. You know, what's great about being with young people, including you, are you guys young?
You
I
tell
don't
us.
know.
You've been
You
threatening
can-
to revoke our young status
You
for
can
years.
determine better than us.
Yeah.
What is the cutoff to you of young?
Well,
This is a serious question.
okay, you've aged out of the youth movement.
That
Okay,
we've
definitely
decided.
not youth.
Yeah.
When you hear a person is, let's say 37, do you say that's a young person?
Still young.
Still young. Okay.
Still young.
We got some time.
And the other thing, I think about that is that, people say this cliche about young at heart, but the reality is, in a long life, 80 years, 90 years, that's a long time in the life of a person. It's the blink of an eye in a struggle, the blink of an eye.
Mhm.
So why do we measure, elders and long? I can't stand it when movement people call me an elder, because I know I'll be an ancestor in about a minute. So I don't want
It
that.
feels like a gateway drug to
Yeah,
ancestors.
it's a gateway. Exactly. But no, I mean, seriously, I think that there's a sense that people often say, do you have any advice? And the answer is that's a hierarchical question.
Mhm.
Like, oh, you're an elder.
Yeah.
You must have advice. No, I have ideas. I have suggestions. I want to be in the dialogue. I don't have advice in that sense.
So what I'm hearing
So-
is a little bit of resentment at an assumption that, one, you know better, and two, that that's maybe your role is just to speak on your past experience.
Yeah, I resist that role.
Mm.
Because I think it's hierarchical. I think it leads to a kind of sense of those who know more, those who know less. Any teacher, and I've been a teacher my whole life, any teacher worth her salt knows that you're a student of your students first. Where you really learn how to be a teacher is by listening to your students. And that's true if they're 5 years old or 15 or 35.
Mm.
Does that parallel to interviews as well? Do you become the interviewer of your interviewer? Or
I got questions for you, if that's what you're asking.
Because it's funny.
We'll get there.
Because we don't want your advice, so don't worry about it.
Thank you.
But but I do want to hear your perspective on things right now.
Sure.
And I think you've had a long and unique experience that allows you to respond to things in a unique way that is valuable. Does that break the hierarchical barrier?
Absolutely.
Of it?
Are we
All right.
allowed to say you have
Absolutely.
expertise?
Absolutely, because you could say the same thing about everyone you talk to.
Right, right.
That you have a unique experience.
Uh-huh.
You're a unique human being. You've got 3 dimensions. You've learned from your experiences. Maybe you've even reflected on your experiences. Good, let's talk about that.
Cool.
But that's not because the older person knows and the younger person doesn't
Right.
know,
Mm.
or the teacher knows and the student learns.
Right.
Mhm.
We're throwing that out the window.
Throw it out the window.
But now that we got you here,
and I'm so happy I'm so happy to be here on celebrating my birthday.
hey, happy birthday! Bruh.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
You're the great.
It's not actually my birthday.
But we're celebrating it.
I'm celebrating. I'll
This is
explain
the day
why.
that it's observed. Yeah.
I'll explain why. My birthday is the day after Christmas, so we're a few weeks past
Unfair,
my birthday.
unreasonable.
But
How dare they?
a friend said to me, "Let's have a birthday party for your 81st." And I said, "No." When I turned 30, I decided I was only celebrating decades,
Okay.
30, 40, 50. He said, "That makes sense, except when you're 80, you should go back to before you were 5.
Uh-huh.
Celebrate every month."
Exactly.
You're still standing, dude.
80 years and 9 months. Yeah, that's
what
pretty
I'm
good.
80 and a half.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Just like a 5-year-old. So that's why I say I'm celebrating my birthday, even though it's not my birthday.
My nephew, he got up to, this is really how he learned fractions. He started saying 5, 6, and 11, 12. So he was going month by month.
That's perfect. Yeah.
That's pretty good.
So not advice, but perspective. And you use this really beautiful language of like seeing the dark side of the world. And so I want to get some of that vantage point, because I think that's a skill. Because right now the world's looking super shadowy and super dark. In these past few weeks, we've seen the murder up in Minneapolis. We've seen these past few years of the escalation of the genocide in Palestine. We're seeing the fascist structure articulate itself with some real capital F fascism right now. And so, you have seen the ebbs and flows of then what resistance looks like. You have, participated or been privy to what it's looked like to take the highest risk. I think our entry point of movement work was much more like organizing soft power and how do we have mass protests? How do we transform consciousness? How do we bring about new ideas? How do we live in community? And it seems like shit's escalating. And so as you're looking at, the clock of the world, or you're looking at the cycle, do you feel like people need to escalate, or do you feel like there's a new way we need to show up to this moment more than just being present and using our voice in the ways that we have over the last decade?
I think, a couple of things in answer to your question. One is that I think we are, and we have to name that we have a fascist government.
Yeah.
That it's not, we shouldn't tiptoe around that. It's got all the earmarks of fascism, but we don't yet have a fascist society. And that makes a big difference. The fact that there's resistance, and frankly, the resistance is fire from below. We do not have an opposition party that's worthy of the name,
Right.
but we do have opposition from below, and that matters. And so I think that we have to name that we have a fascist government. It does all the things that a fascist government does. It has, scapegoats, convenient people to pick on who are weak or who have less ability to defend themselves. It uses violence all the time. It intersects business and, and I could go down the list. It's anti-labor, and in the case of Trump, you mentioned Gaza is escalating, but let's note that we have gunboat diplomacy in Venezuela.
Right.
We have the January 6th celebration. We have the killing in Minneapolis. And these things are, actually tell us where we are. Another characteristic of fascist government that I think is important is they lie in public. And they do it not because they think we're stupid. They do it to show us that they can lie in public. That's the whole point of lying in public. It's not, we're sitting there watching a split screen.
Right.
We're watching a murder of a person driving a car. And at the same time, we're hearing top government officials, including the president and the vice president, say it never happened.
He was run over.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, he wasn't.
He was run over. He walks away, and we can see it. But the point, we sometimes miss the point when we want to shout louder, wait, that didn't happen. It's hypocritical or whatever. We say those things, but the reality is the point of it is to lie in public because you can get away with it. And frankly, I think one of the most hopeful things happening right now is mobilization after mobilization after mobilization. So I think that really matters. I also think you ask about, do we need to go deeper or do more or how to proceed? My own perspective on that is all of it. We need to do more. We need to do differently. We need to, do small gatherings and big gatherings. We need all of that. But I think it's important to remember that we move toward revolutionary change or any change on two legs. One leg is mobilization, power from below, fire from below. And the other is real politics. So I find the election of Mamdani to be very hopeful. I find the Squad and the Progressive Caucus to be hopeful. Are they the answer? They're not the answer. But are they important? They are. So I remember when Obama was elected, I know I was the only radical in America not to be disappointed with his presidency because I didn't expect more. But the truth is, when he was elected, he said one thing: if you want universal health care, build a movement for universal health care. That was absolutely correct. He can't do it. Are you kidding? But if we had a movement,
He could have helped.
oh, look, there's no
He had a
question.
lot of, a pretty extensive mailing list for a
There's
movement
no
for universal
question.
healthcare.
They could have done things differently. You may not remember, but when he was elected, there was this whole idea that they would keep the movement going.
Right.
That ended in a couple of months. It was Chris Hayes' brother who managed that effort out of the White House. He got a phone call from some guy in Shitkick, Texas, saying, "Who are these people outside my congressional office? I'm the Democratic congressman from this district. Get them the fuck," and they did. So they shut it down right away.
Yeah.
That's because power doesn't like independent power, right? And that's what we have to build. So I'm a big believer that you walk on two legs. But my job is the mobilization from below. I'm not really good at the other job. But then I admire people like Ilhan Omar and Mamdani and the other
Mhm.
folks who were in that, Bernie Sanders. I admire him
Delia
very much.
Ramirez.
So if those are the two legs we need to walk on, how do you make sense of the like kind of cliche squabble between one leg and the other?
Well, I think that's the kind of thing that we have to overcome. We have to find ways to talk through the contradictions that we face as a movement and find common ground. Give you two things that come to my mind. One is when we were mobilizing against the war in Vietnam before we were underground, a group of us met with the Vietnamese revolutionaries in Cuba. And they said, at one meeting, they said, write on the chalkboard what you think the primary slogan should be for the anti-war movement. And one person walked up and wrote, end the war in Vietnam now. And one walked up and wrote, bring the war home now. And they said, it can't be both.
Mm.
Figure it out.
Mm.
And I thought that was a really profound understanding that they were saying, what's the primary contradiction? Who's in your tent? And we're not good at that. We're not good at saying who's in our tent. So I would say during the height of the war in Gaza, but I would still say this, our primary contradiction should be ceasefire now, end the fighting and killing now, and stop all U.S. aid to Israel. That's both sharp, but it's also broad. So can we find that kind of unity around Trump? The problem, of course, I said the Democratic Party is not a party of opposition. The problem is their North Star is no Donald Trump.
Right.
That's ridiculous.
And it's proven to not work. So if that's the central contradiction in that moment of you sitting in Cuba in conversation, what do you see as the central contradiction now in relationship to our own fascist descendants here?
I think we actually, I mean, I don't know that I can come up with a slogan without you, but I have a couple of ideas.
We'll get a chalkboard for you. Yeah.
But I have a couple of ideas. One is that I think that we should be saying, stop fascism, build a new society. And I think we should become much more articulate about what our North Star is. As I say, the Democratic Party, first of all, we walk to the crisis we're in a bipartisan manner. Take any issue, Israel, Palestine, take education, my issue. We walk to the catastrophe with a bipartisan effort. So Obama, Arnie Duncan also agree that education would be better if it were privatized. They also agree that standardized tests with high stakes are a way to understand whether a school works. Those are both fundamentally false.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to understand that they're not the answer. We're not going back to them. So when they say our North Star is get rid of Trump, that's not my North Star. My North Star is a new society and sweep away the bipartisan effort that got us to this catastrophe. I'm willing to say Mamdani, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, yes, they are doing the right thing. But we need a mass movement and we need more focused cadre organizations pushing in that direction.
So let's keep workshopping it because I'm hearing this new society,
Well,
and I think we agree, and I imagine that our imaginations of that new society have a lot of the same components. But I would love to hear from you when you say a new society. Like, let's make the beginning of some of the bullet list of like some of the foundations of what that new society looks like.
Let me start smaller and ask you two questions.
Okay.
Are you movement leaders? I hear a deep sigh.
We'll be right back.
From 2 miles. Why are you sighing?
Because there's an obvious way I could definitely say yes and live and function in that responsibility in many spaces. The side comes from twofold. One, like the premise is something that like has become shakier to me as a concept. So is there movement leader, or is that something to self-proclaim? And then secondly, just like to some of what you were talking about earlier, like I've been on the other side of just experiencing not having the energy to be as participatory or as present.
Right.
So I think, I very often still am like invited, called upon, step in space and am seen and take on the responsibility of movement leadership. But I wouldn't go around and say in the same way that I probably would 5-6 years ago, I'm a movement leader. I would say
you
movement.
weren't comfortable
movement
saying it
builder.
then either.
Yeah,
No,
I would use the
yeah.
language movement builder as a way to.
But
like,
your discomfort is absolutely appropriate, and we should all be uncomfortable. And the reason we should be uncomfortable is the word leader is a hierarchical
exactly.
model.
Mm-hmm.
So when we think of a leader, we think of a male,
Right.
tradition. We think of a white tradition.
Right.
We think of the guy who's in charge. But I think we need to challenge that and say we are, as Barbara Ransby used to say, we're leaderful.
Right.
We're not leaderless. We're leaderful. We're all movement leaders, and that's, I think, a better way to think about it.
So I have a question that I think that framing is something that we have like emerged in from thinkers like you and Barbara, and has its power. And I've just kind of come to terms with the fact that like we can denigrate charismatic leadership all we want and the gender dynamics that are often at play with that, but people really respond to charisma, and they respond to having a figure,
And an identifiable person.
right? And I wonder if we've like, it's one of those like, do you want to be right or do you want to be effective moments of like, I'm not saying that person becomes a cult leader, but I kind of feel like 10 years in, we've sold ourselves short by like over disparaging charisma.
I couldn't agree more.
Conceded the space a little bit.
No, I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more in the sense that when you go full in and we have no leaders, who's going to mimeograph? Oh, I'm sorry, you guys don't mimeograph. Sorry, but who's gonna knock on the door?
Who's gonna share the reel?
Who's going to show up? But
But it's not just who's going to make the copy. It's literally who are people going to feel moved to listen to.
Well, I think it's important to hope that Ilhan Omar, Bernie Sanders, and Bernie's a good example of this, but let's hope that Zoran Mamdani is a person who rejects the idea that just having charisma is enough. And I think he's got the strength and the depth to probably do that. But the reason I asked, are you leaders, is because I guess I want to push two things. One is, I've said to you many times that this hub that you've created, which is now Respair Media, is a place where the movement hears itself. And that matters. But also Haymarket House is that place. Also Pilsen Community Books. Also, the Experimental Station. More than that, if you look at our movement in Chicago, you see legal organizations, PAL Legal, People's Law Office, Uptown People's Law Center, and on and on. You see organizations, the Breathing Room, the Let Us Breathe Collective, the Black Voters Project, and on and on. You see the Chicago Abortion Fund. I mean, again and again, but we're not yet coherent as a movement. So the reason I asked if you're leaders is I have a simple proposal, and this is us working this out, which is I was part of Detroit Summer, and I was, very much, Grace Lee Boggs was to me, as she was to you, and still is, very much an inspiration and somebody who illuminates the world for us. I think that matters a lot. But your show on Detroit Summer was fantastic.
So if folks want to find out more about what the hell Bill is talking about, we made a travel show last year, 1 million experiments in the field. The last episode 5, is in Detroit with the folks at the Boggs Center. And if these are names that are not ringing a bell for you, it's a really great starting point to learn about the important visionary organizing and work of Jimmy and Grace Lee Boggs.
That's a great
Wasn't that succinct?
interjection. Perfect. Thank you, Ben. But what I wanted to say is, I think that we could, as a broad, heterogeneous movement, I think we could do Chicago Summer 2026. And I think I could easily imagine, you were asking about, do we need more mobilizations? I could easily imagine, not just you, but many of us saying, we need an on-ramp for the movement. For young people who want to be involved, there are very few on-ramps. And the on-ramp that's available to them is electoral politics and the Democratic Party.
Or the internet.
Or the internet.
Or mass protest.
But wouldn't it be great if we got 10 or 15 or 20 organizations together and we said, we could use an intern for the summer. We could use somebody to work with us. And in that working with us, we could imagine potlucks every Friday movie night every Sunday, and so on. For 5 weeks, 6 weeks in the summer, people come to Chicago, and we let people know that if you come to Chicago, these are organizations who are looking for folks who want to get involved in movement work. Let's do that.
Which wouldn't be that hard because a lot of the spaces have distinct programming. It's just the collectivizing it, coordinating it to feel like it's a part of one membrane.
I agree. And it's actually a matter of naming it.
Yeah.
So if you name it as an on-ramp for the movement, you name it as political education, you name it as movement building, and working together across these dozens of wonderful organizations in Chicago. Wouldn't that be fun?
It does sound like
It does sound like fun. And you're like, imagine potlucks. You don't have to imagine them. You do them regularly. So it's a very tangible imagination.
Yeah. But I was thinking if we had these interns, it would be, you could even imagine if we had 20 people here this summer and it built to the next summer, you could imagine, you have a potluck and you invite somebody in to give a talk. You invite a city council person, Byron Sichko Lopez. You invite a media person, Maya Shenwar, or one of you. You invite, in other words, you do political education, but in the nicest possible, kind of down to earth, learning in public kind of way.
Well, it's very much like in the ethic of the work I've seen you take on as a educator and as a teacher. And I want to talk a little bit about the relationship between that work and this moment. I think the kinds of conversations that are useful now are different from the ones that we've spent. They're related, but different from the ones that we spent a lot of time building the skills for. At least I think for us, we're feeling, if we're inviting people in, the stakes feel different in terms of what that can mean for them, and the responsibility as the inviter. We're having this conversation, like you said, a couple weeks after Renee Good was killed in Minneapolis, doing something that countless people I know do. And, I think there were some premises in the 2010s of relational privilege and how that'll protect your body. And I think that has really shifted and we're in a different place. And I feel, and maybe this is also just getting older, but the sense of needing to ensure protection for people who I'm asking to make sacrifice.
Can I decode some of that or just cut through a little? There was okay, we're going to go and take on the cops or and we just need a few NLG lawyers around. And if something happens, we'll call them, then we'll get out later that night. Or what Daniel's alluding to, there was this idea that white folks to the front, they're not going to hurt you. Right. And that was never fully true. There was fallacy in that, but there was some reality as well. But now it is clear, particularly white folks who see themselves not in accordance with the mainstream white supremacist norm that this fascism is forming itself around. The idea that they are just as expendable, or maybe not just as, but are also expendable in the same way black folks are and other marginalized people.
Yeah. And then maybe there's another actually level of vitriol for them that's different from the just these dehumanized massive, the race trader position. And so as a often accused race trader here, let's talk about
as
that.
An acclaimed race trader.
There's absolutely no question. I mean, when SNCC was leading sit-ins in the South, one SNCC member was a white guy, Bob Zellner, a terrific guy. And when they would get arrested, he would get the shit kicked out of him much more. He wasn't even a Jewish kid from New York. He was a Baptist kid from the South, and they really.
I would have guessed wrong on Zellner.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe they just looked at the paperwork.
Maybe he's a Jew. No, they knew he was one of them. His dad was a cracker, and he, so he does. I get that, and it's interesting to me that you went right to the kind of dire possibilities, because I think that's good and right. I wasn't even thinking of that when you said, as the inviter, I have responsibility, because as the inviter, you have responsibility for their well-being, not just even their safety against the cops, but their well-being and having an experience that matters. So it's not something you can do glibly. And I think that's an important reminder. And then you think about the stakes of something like this. And, the thing that many of my friends have been, kind of put out about is that everyone in the nation knows who Renee Good is. And nobody in the nation knows who Silverio Villegas Gonzalez is.
Mhm.
He was killed in Chicago by ICE agents. And it's not that nobody knows, but it's not the same.
Uh-huh.
And it gives you that same creepy feeling that even here, even when we're getting shot, there's a privilege that you can't
There's more of a
escape.
sense of this was really not supposed to
This
happen.
was
It's all
not
not
supposed-
good.
The
but
other
this
stuff
is-
was bad,
yeah.
but you
But
could
this
live
is
with it.
eye-opening.
Yeah.
As
So-
you
Yes.
see the discourse.
So I agree, but I'm curious how you make sense of that as someone who has been the exceptionalized.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think we all knew that you're talking about the 60 years ago. We all knew that Students for a Democratic Society people were being beaten up. Some of us were hung out the windows by the Red Squad. It was bad. We weren't being murdered. Fred Hampton was being murdered. Mark Clark was being murdered. The LA Panthers were being murdered. So even there, you cannot escape the fact that we live in a male supremacist, white supremacist, capitalist, individualist society. And so I don't deny any of that. But I want to go back to the responsibility of the inviter, because only if we took this seriously and actually began to think about what are the 20, 30 people who want to get in a room and be the inviters, it would take that level of commitment and deep thought about what would it look like, where would folks live, how would they get around, if we were in New York, they could take free and fast buses, but here in Chicago, who knows?
We got some more bike lanes.
But I'm taking seriously your point.
Yeah.
That if we're the inviters, or if we create a coalition that could be the inviters for Chicago summer 2026, we'd have to be very serious that it comes with obligations that are not light.
Yeah.
I probably didn't articulate it well, but that's probably what was 80% of the breadth of that sigh when you asked about movement leader. Because there's definitely, there's an obvious yes of holding that. But I think now from experience, that is so much more clear of I am now, when you step into that role, whether it should be or not, you kind of become responsible, like you said, for not just what happens with the cops, but the well-being of everyone in that proverbial circle in a way that is not a light responsibility. I think there was a time where there was just pride and maybe ego, maybe sense of self, maybe feeling like I'm doing something earnest. That was I'm responsible for all these people. And now it's I'm responsible for all these people.
You just added something to my head about this, because I think that may be a better way to talk about being a leader is what are you responsible for?
Yeah.
Where do you show up?
Yeah.
Who do you show up for?
Yeah.
Who are your people? What do you owe them? And that may be a better way, because all of us in that sense can be leaders. We have to be explicit about the responsibility we're taking. And as I've said to you both over the years, this space is a responsible space, and you do it responsibly. You don't fuck around. I mean, you do fuck
There's
around.
no
Actually, you fuck around all the time.
Yeah.
We
But
do
found
sometimes
out.
find out.
Yeah. But I think,
find out some things.
the playfulness of it and the dialogue between the two of you is part of it. But you definitely show up and do it. So people come to depend on you. We feel that you'll be responsible. You won't leave us hanging. I think that matters, and I think that may be a better way to talk about movement leadership. Where are you showing up? How? Why? With whom?
And who do you feel and are you accepting the responsibility for?
Yeah, I asked my students at Stateville Prison last year. One of my prompts was, "Who are your people? Who do you claim, and who claims you?" And one of my students, without missing a beat, said, "The state of Illinois claims me, but they're not my people."
I want to put a pin in that, because I want to come back to what prison education means for you and means for our movement. But I kind of want to do a little detour. You referenced 60 years ago, and I can see the black and white documentary images, and then the images I imagine of red squads or shootouts with Panthers in the streets, and the context that you existed in of SDS, Weathermen, Weather Underground. And as we're recording this right now, we're in award season for films. And one of my little blow some steam off things that I do, I've looked at a lot of film breakdown, pop culture stuff.
Me too.
And so right now, everybody's head over heels. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people are head over heels over what's looking like is a favorite to win Film of the Year at the Oscars, one battle after another. And in it, I'm watching all the podcasts of people talking about this film, and with like such a casualness, just say, oh yeah, this is like an analog of a modern day Weatherman or a modern day Weather Underground. And so I'm curious for you, the film's not as important. The first act is rough for people, but it is a really good movie.
The first act is money.
You like the first act? Okay, we'll talk
damn.
about the actual film part of it in a second if you want. But I'm more curious for you, how do you receive where that era of your life and your comrade's life lives on in pop culture imagination? I think there's a way we speak about it in movement circles, or the way that radicals who read the books and the memoirs like have a hard-nosed relationship to it. But the idea of Weatherman means something just for folks who are not necessarily politicized. How does that pop culture legacy live on for you?
Well, it's funny because to be in the pop culture, I mean, when Starbucks was putting out napkins that talked about what happened 25 years ago on their 25th anniversary, one day I picked up a napkin and it said, 25 years ago, the Weather Underground bombed the Pentagon. I'm like, oh shit. Now
That had to be a surreal story.
Yeah, that's surreal, man. But it is funny to be kind of in history in that way.
A fun fact.
But I think it's really important to make a separation between images, mythology, and what happened. And I think you can learn more from what happened. I love this film, and I thought it was utterly brilliant. This director, Paul Thomas Anderson, obviously read everything about the Weather Underground. He obviously listened to our son Zaid Dorn's podcast, Mother Country Radicals. He obviously researched Assata Shakur and the Black Liberation Army. And he makes a mishmash, not set in the 60s, set in the 90s or whenever. I don't know.
Like the aughts.
Or the aughts, yeah.
Which changes the memory, changes the imagination of it.
It does. It changes it dramatically. So the only people I've talked to who really dislike the film are people my age who were part of the experience that we shared together. Why did they dislike it? They would say to me, that Leonardo DiCaprio is nothing like you. Yeah, he's not me. That's a character, and you didn't smoke that much dope. Well, I did, but,
You just weren't invited.
I just get my wits about me. That's all.
Actually,
that's my issue. They make weed smoking seem like it just makes you dumb and it fries on your brain because you smoked weed for 50 years. Now you can't remember the passwords. That's not how that works.
What I took, I thought the film had many wonderful things.
The amount of times you asked me the password for something.
I blame my concussions, not the weed.
That was my favorite part. Two favorite parts. One was, I don't know the fucking password. That was great. But the other one was when the girl's riding in the hills of California. Oh my God. But people, as I say, people my age who were part of this experience often map it on directly. It doesn't work that way. It's really a movie for today.
Right.
Yes, he did some research. Yes, he figured out some things. In fact, the title, One Battle After Another, is taken from a speech Bernardine gave.
Wow. What was the context of the speech?
The context of the speech was explaining how we can be defeated, but we have to keep going. And it was about Vietnam and the Black struggle. And she gave a speech at a conference, and she used that phrase.
Is it a recorded speech or is it just
it's actually, people have seen it. My niece is going to send it to me.
That clip.
She's out in Hollywood. But anyway, the point is that he borrowed and he researched, but he made a fictional account. Another thing that people my age will say to me is, but his whole motivation was sex. It's so sexualized. I'm like, dude, were you ever 19? I mean, come on. That's a big motivation. I mean, but
we're celibate, that's for sure.
It's silly to rewrite and try to make people. The other thing I like about it is everybody in the film is deeply flawed. There is nobody who's the revolutionary.
Right.
And the fact that the leader of that group ends up selling out. Yeah. Did you see the Battle
Spoiler
of
alert.
Algiers?
Yeah.
Everyone sells out. I mean, when when you're offered the hot lead enema, you'll talk, I mean, and she does. So it's terrible that she's not perfect, but that's human, so I don't, so the mythology, it bugs me in one way, and it's not this film, but the mythologizing of that period does bug me because it acts as a wet blanket on today. If everybody when kids say to me, I was born in the wrong decade, I should have been around in the 60s.
Yeah.
That's wrong. No, you shouldn't have. I mean, first of all, we were stupid. And secondly, there is no 60s. Nobody looked at their watch on December 31st, 1969 and said, oh shit, it's going to end.
Right.
Let's get high.
Yeah,
I mean, we got high, but not because it was the end of anything.
It's time for bell bottoms.
So nobody lives by decades. You didn't say, oh, now it's 2011, we got to do something. No.
2020 was a little bit of
Okay.
That was a little bit
All
of a
right.
pivot.
that one.
But you get my point. We
Nah, for sure.
live complicated lives and they blend into each other. There is no time when, it ends. So to me, the phrase the 60s is both myth and symbol, and it's sold to us, it's marketed to us. But I think its negative thing is that it says to kids today, you can't possibly top the 60s. I mean, Martin Luther King and the
Right.
Black Panthers and blah,
It's
blah, blah.
this past apex that we're after. So I think it can do that. I also think part of how the mythology is packaged is without the study and ideology that some people were actually doing, right? It's like part of what happens with myth and when it gets performed in movies and that kind of thing is that people see the aesthetic, they see the kind of like posture of rebellion and militancy.
And like the legible action.
Right, without the and I don't know how many people were actually reading back then, but my sense is that there was some principled study happening as part of the work. And so
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm wondering, there's how Hollywood mythologizes, but I also think there's like how young and especially young white people mythologize the militancy of y'all's actions. And so I'm wondering, how do you see that? What are whether it's misconceptions or limitations of people's understanding when it's like the thing that makes us worthwhile is to be under fire by the state?
I would worry about that, but I do think that, we went on tour with Bill Siegel and Sam Green when they made the movie The Weather Underground. And we went on tour with them. And what was interesting about that tour and about them as filmmakers is that it raised questions more than it offered answers. And one of the questions it raised is, what is commitment? What is my responsibility? What action do I have to take? I think it's a mistake if people look back and say, oh, here's a tactical answer. There's no tactical answer. But what there is a sense of people who believed it was possible and were willing to risk on behalf of that. So if what you see from the mythologizing of the 60s is courage, commitment, community, that's good. To me, that's great because that's what we need now, courage, commitment, and community. And that doesn't dictate any tactic, but it does mean, for example, you guys have created a community out of this podcast. There's community at Haymarket House. There's community when we gather at a potluck. There's a community when we gather at a Bears game, but I'm not going to go there. But, I think that we need to keep those things in mind. We need community desperately. And in a hyper-individualistic society where every problem goes directly to the individual, we need to fight that. And that's an underlying problem that we were fighting deeply in those years. And it expressed itself in many ways, including communal living, including, building cadre organizations, including taking to the streets, but more than that. And reading was important. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, last one on this thread, and I'm trying to figure out how to do this in a way that's appropriate to ask on camera. So if it don't make sense or if you don't want to do it, we could move on past.
I'll look up, I'll say, cut.
When I hear in Daniel's
the producer
question,
who isn't here. Yeah.
when I hear in Daniel's question, and when I see also again like folks who aren't reading text, just like say, "Oh, this is like a corollary of Weather Underground," and like what I understand, they understand. It's like a BC era of tactic. They discuss it as like, "Oh, I kind of agree with where they are situated in history, with that commitment, with their relationship to power, with their relationship to militarism." But that's a level of militancy and a toolbox of tactics that are from a gone time that we can't really like engage in a contemporary way. And I'm not necessarily advocating for we need more, hyper militant tactics, but how do you see people relating to that part of it? Because that's what I hear you in the conversation do a lot of, like, there was commitment, there was study, there was legacy, there's so much of it that we need to continue. But then, like you said, you read on the napkin and there's a Starbucks fun fact about blowing up the Pentagon.
Right.
Or you watch this film and you're seeing bank robberies, and, you know, there used to be armored car robbery. You know, there were, some of them weren't as planned out, but the idea was we are in a heightened state, a heightened militarized, oppressive state, and history tells us we need to expand to how we respond. So that's me being as careful as I can with my word choice. But in terms of how people, and particularly white people, respond to the tactics for modern times, how do you see that?
Well, you know, I am not a tactician, and I've
Right.
never been a tactician,
Right.
and I don't think
You
I
always
think-
brought the vibes.
Yeah, you know, it's always about something else. First of all, it's always about a North Star.
Yeah.
It's always about a vision of the future, which isn't set and solid. It's dynamic and hazy,
Mhm.
but we move towards something. You know, we had a conversation in our living room 40 years ago with Albie Sachs of the African National Congress, the leader of the fight against apartheid, and Rashid Khalidi. And one of the things Albie talked about that night was how they used to take the cadre and they'd say, the leadership would say, we have to do a retreat for 5 days to talk about where we're going. And the militants would say, that's ridiculous. We're at war. We have no time. We're in crisis. We're always in crisis. We're always at war. Sometimes you have to stop and think. And Albie and the leadership argued, Mandela and others argued, that we won't do things right in the present if we don't know where we're going. Where we're going is not laid out as a map or a finished product, but we have to know what our values are. What are we standing on? What are we trying to do? Or we will fuck up in the present. So that's part of how I look at what you're saying. But the other thing is, I was kind of unpacking with you the concept of what is leadership.
Mhm.
I get very unhappy when people go overboard saying, we're going to demonstrate, we're going to be nonviolent. I get why we say that. I understand that. After the Weather Underground film came out, we were in the green room at Sundance, and some LA Times reporter, young person, came in and talked to us a bit. And she said at one point, why couldn't you be nonviolent like Gandhi and King and Mandela? And you're having no reaction. Okay. Bernadine said, Mandela?
Yeah.
And she said, yes, like
Yeah.
Gandhi and King and Mandela.
Mhm.
And she said, you know why Mandela was in prison? Yes, because he was resisting apartheid. Yes, and he started an armed resistance
Mhm.
to apartheid. And if you read his Rivonia speech, it's such a brilliant speech. When he was on trial for his life, and he was explaining the levels of resistance and what it's going to take. And he didn't mince any words.
Mhm.
He said, we are not terrorists, but we are going to move from here to here to here. And we're serious about ending apartheid. So when people overstate,
Mhm.
we must be nonviolent,
Right.
they're missing two things. One is they're missing what power, you know, we talk about capitalism, the invisible hand of the market. That's bullshit. It's a cold, visible, brutal,
Yeah.
tenacious, and
Fist.
violent
Fist, yeah,
hand.
yeah.
So they're not fucking around. They know what they want. So that's one part of it. But the other part of it is you miss when you say that. You think violence is your action or my action. Violence is in the structure
Mhm.
of the world we live in. You don't have to do a thing and violence will happen. It's like slavery, to take an obvious American example. The enslaved workers were not there happily. They were not there peacefully, even if they never raised a hand.
Right.
And then when Nat Turner does Nat Turner, he's a terrorist. He's violent. Look what he did. Missing the fact that the system, hundreds of years, was systemic, sustained, institutionalized violence. That's where we're living today. You can't see it because if a kid dies of pneumonia in Guatemala, it's quiet death, but it's violently executed. And we don't see that. And so I always want to argue with people, not because I think you should pick up the gun or any such, wild statement. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you're letting them get away with murder when you say, I'll be nonviolent. Well,
even
they're violent
right.
every minute of every day.
and even if you're not going to try to, fight in their battlefield, by saying that, you've forfeited the potential space in how they see you, right? Like the idea is that then they don't have to worry about whether you'll do something.
That's one part of it, and the other part of it is you're pretending that they're nonviolent,
Right.
except when they invade Venezuela.
Right.
They were, or except when they blow up boats in the Caribbean.
Right.
They were violent.
It's
way
assuming
before
an
that.
absence of violence
Exactly.
in the first place. This
Whereas I
idea
want to
would be-
assume that
yeah.
violence is stitched into the
Right.
fabric
Yeah.
of the system as it exists. And if somebody responds, that's not, it can't be called out as special.
It's not nonviolence when the streets are flowing with blood. You just are passive or protected to it. Language has helped me over this because we got this a lot when we started. Like every action has to be nonviolent. Every action has to be nonviolent. And I think when I look at the history that I thread through and including some of the context we're talking about, anti-violence actually situates itself more for me because it's
Better.
because I get a little uncomfortable for folks who appreciate the history of militant resistance or even armed resistance, then think it was the violence. And so there's also this like, oh, we need revolutionary violence.
Exactly.
I was like, I want to
No,
slow
you're
us on
exactly
that.
right.
Anti-violence as a force that can respond, that can negate, that may be soft, that may also take, more traditional forms, I think philosophically moves us through this fake binary of
I
violent,
think that's really
nonviolent.
helpful. And I think, back in the day, John McCain is bombing Hanoi from the air.
Mhm.
And we're putting a stick of dynamite in the Pentagon. And he's not violent, and we are violent. It makes no sense. So I want to be.
And for those who don't know, that it was an empty building at the time, right?
It was the middle of the night. But, I mean, I could elaborate. But the point is, yes, that partly they get away with murder by pretending that what we're seeing as normal, if we were living in 1840, what we're seeing as normal
Right.
is violent to the
Hyper-violent.
to the nth degree.
And it's so funny, like the way people evoke two of the three, specifically King and Gandhi, around this like forcing a disposition on us as how we resist, is also the like very convenient move past. These were also two people that were murdered. So this whole idea of like situating their existence as separate from violence.
Yeah, but there's another aspect to it, which is I think people should read King.
Yeah.
Don't believe the myth about King.
Yeah.
Read his last book.
Right.
Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? He deals with the question of violence. Or read Charlie Cobb, who was a student nonviolent
This
coordinating
nonviolent stuff will
committee
get you killed.
guy who wrote This Nonviolent Shit Could Get You Killed.
Great book.
It's a great book. And he pointed out, if you look closely at the pictures of Martin Luther King in his living room, which was, by the way, firebombed during the Montgomery bus boycott, you see King in the foreground. Behind him, two older black men in rocking chairs with shotguns.
That's, I think,
Wait,
the perfect example of anti-violence. It's
Exactly.
Like,
That's
the Klan is coming
anti-violence.
around to
We don't
terrorize
want King
us.
killed.
We're gonna
We're here. And the SNCC people go south to register voters. Every house they stay in, every family they stay with has guns.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's why Charlie used to say, it's the non-student, non-nonviolent, non-coordinated, non-committed. So anti-violence is a good way of saying it, because it's not like you don't want to heroize that or mythologize that to that degree. I think it's important to remember that these are real people moving through real society. And when you see somebody like Dick Cheney at a Martin Luther King breakfast, you want to jump out a window because
First of all, he shot people.
Exactly, literally. When he shot,
and not to mention the decision, but like
the number of deaths that he caused, I mean, literally is frightening.
Absolutely. And then one
shotgun blast to a friend's face.
Totally.
All right, abrupt transition.
And
you
then
ready
we
for
came
it?
up with
Yeah,
time,
yeah,
yeah.
but abrupt transition, and on the spot. Which kid are you most proud of? You got one that's a teacher. You got one that has done many things, but also had, I think, a very valiant and important effort as the district attorney up in the Bay. And you got one that wrote about you in
among
Burlington.
other things. Yes.
Among other things. I'm joking in the question.
Yeah, I mean, of course. But I do have three. We do have 3 sons, and we have 7 grandkids. And one has been a school teacher in middle school for 21 years. He's a lifer. One is a professor of law at Berkeley, but did
Shout out to
run as a progressive
Chase of the Ring.
prosecutor. We gave him $200 for his campaign. We said, we hope you win. And if you become prosecutor, we will denounce you. So it was all there. And then one is Zaid Ersdorn, who is a playwright, an author, did the podcast. Did you see the play by any chance?
I missed the play.
I saw it. It was.
I know you saw it
It
because I
was
saw
very
you there.
good. So him and Tom Morello just wrote and opened and put up a play called Revolutions at the Goodman here in Chicago, and I've never seen something more distant from how the description could have made it really bad. Like, there's no words that can communicate how not corny something that could be corny was.
Wow, it's interesting you use that word because when they were in rehearsal, they fired the choreographer, and I asked Tom Morello, the rock star, one of the best guitarists of all time. I said, "Why did you fire her?" He said, "Because she was doing kind of Broadway choreography. It was corny."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "The only criteria I have is if a Rage Against the Machine fan sees the play, they don't think it's corny." And so that was his point.
It's a fine line.
Yeah, it's a hard
Earnest
line.
and corny adjacent. Earnestness is corny adjacent.
Yeah.
And so how do you that's kept me
I
up
was
at
going to
night.
say to Damon, though, if you haven't seen it, you'll get a chance when it goes to Broadway, and we're hoping it will go to Broadway, and it may. And it'll be twice as expensive, but you can take a free bus because Mom
There you
Diane
go.
is the mayor.
You warned
So-
me. You warned
And
me.
you were
So you'll save $3.
if you're looking for Bill, you can find him on the M104 bus going across Manhattan just for shits and giggles. Here,
Exactly.
you know?
Actually, I'm going to be outside the theater selling Zaid's book. You know that Zaid has a book coming out?
I thought you were going to be selling bonus tickets. I thought that you
I'll do that as
leaned
well.
into that.
I'll resell.
Uh-huh.
But the truth is, 2 of my kids have books coming out this spring. Chesa, my youngest son, Chesa Boudin, has a book of Kathy Boudin's poetry with an introduction by Angela Davis.
Awesome.
And Kathy was a consistent, persistent poet, and sometimes an extraordinarily brilliant
Can
poet.
you give the 3 cents for people who don't know who Kathy is? Can you
Kathy
give-
Boudin died 4 or 5 years ago. She was in Bedford Hills Prison for 22 years for involvement in the Brinks robbery. Before that, she was an SDS person. She was our dearest, dearest friend, and we adopted her son when she went to prison. And so he's collected her poetry, worked with it with my daughter-in-law, who's a poet, with other people, and he's put together a nice collection. Angela Davis wrote the introduction. And then Zaid has a book coming out, which with Norton, and he got the book contract. He wrote a book proposal during the pandemic. It was, on the strength of the podcast, Mother Country Radicals. He has expanded and deepened and worked with that concept of a double memoir, a memoir of his own life and growing up, a memoir of that generation, Kikuya Shakur and others, and a memoir of his parents. So it's a pretty neat book. I've read it a bunch of times in various drafts, and it's coming out in May. And he finally decided on a title. Want to hear it?
I do. Is it just a secret? Can we tell people?
You can tell
All right.
people. The title he took from a line from the Jefferson Airplane. They have an album called "We Are All Outlaws in the Eyes of America." This is from the late 60s, early 70s. And the line he took is dangerous, dirty, violent, and young, a family history. And you'll appreciate this. Bernadine saw the title and she said, "We weren't dirty." I said, wait, you don't care about the dangerous and violent? No, fuck
That's
that shit.
ideal. Yeah.
But dirty, I always took a shower.
Check under those fingernails. We were spotless.
We were
you know?
spotless and we were
Stereotypes
and
I
every time I
reject.
fucked the pigs, I washed up after. It was so funny to me but it reminded me, Bernadine's like that. I was sent a bumper sticker by a right winger once, and it said Bill Ayers and his wife should be in prison. And Bernadine's response was, "His wife? I have a name." I'm like, dude, it's the prison part that should offend you. And that reminds me of, you see that? I don't know.
Oh, you got your joint on. Can we? Hold on, I'm gonna help you.
Oh, I don't know. I don't mean for that to be on camera. It just says "Good Free Radical." It's got a picture of Welch's grape juice. And it says "Good Free Radical," and it's got my wanted poster. And it says "Bad Free Radical." The same right winger made this T-shirt for me. I love it. So
There you go. I mean, it's
Also,
aesthetically interesting.
Antagonistic merch is so funny.
Yeah. I will go to the print shop. Don't get me wrong.
I wish we had time. We have to be tight on this question.
sure.
So that's actually a thread that you've told us about a lot. So particularly, I think after the 2008 election, there was this like heightened attention on you
Sure.
as you were the terrorist who Obama went to your house. And so that you then were used as like a cudgel to cut at him. And so then you became exposed to probably people whose historical memory let go of you. All these like right-wing folks that would antagonize would come to your talks with counter-protest signs. And you had such a affable, jokey kind of jester way of engaging them. You have this business card where you're taking a picture with somebody with a sign protesting you, and she doesn't even know you're the one hugging her, which speaks to like where they are. You laugh about the bumper sticker, you're wearing the shirt. It has felt like you've done a good job of like finding the humor and the absurdity in this contingency. But it feels to me over the last 10 to 15 years that has morphed into something that is like the ground base of something much more harmful and dangerous. And so when you think of those people who you've seen and met and sometimes like shared a laugh with, has your position or relationship to those folks changed?
And did you see them as harmless then?
I did not see them as harmless then. I was willing to, as you say, see the humor in it and try to roll with it and try to communicate with them. But we were under serious threat, and we had put in our door a picture of our front door with a note saying, "We've got you in our sights, and you will be kidnapped and waterboarded." I mean, that was literally said to us. And so I didn't think they were harmless, but I also think that we can spend too much time in the movement trying to shield ourselves from that kind of thing or trying not to engage in conversation. My favorite moments sometimes as a teacher are getting in real conversation with people who have opposing views down the line, because you can demonstrate two things. One is that you're not afraid of conversation. You don't have to agree with me to be in the room with me. We can have a dialogue. But secondly, I always have thought they were dangerous.
Okay.
In this sense, I think we have...
You just love the danger. You just like
but you go back to the beginning of this country, there's a huge base for white supremacist thinking and policy. It's there. It's always been there. And I've been scared before. I mean, I went to George Wallace rallies in 1968 with black and white organizers, and we would both engage in conversations and get the shit kicked out of us. So, I'm not cavalier about them. Yeah. At the same time, I think we have a responsibility, number one, not to spend all our times being paranoid about who they are. Number two, to do our best to engage in dialogue and conversation, because I know that people change. One of the other things I think is important, besides this, we've talked about this question of decades and time and so on. You look back at the American Revolution and you think of white guys in wigs in Philadelphia. That's not at all what happened. It was contested from the beginning. It was a 7-year civil war, and these are important things to know. So, or go back to the Civil War. It wasn't a war to free the slaves until it was. It was contested. And it was not just contested with the North and the South, it was contested within the North. And so we have to remember that history doesn't unfold in kind of snapshots and clean narratives. It unfolds in contestation and struggle and dialectical movement. So I actually think, and I know you're going to say I'm crazy. You can say it in dance.
You're crazy.
Okay, thank you. But I honestly believe that as bad as this situation is, I see it pregnant with possibilities. And I always go back to Frederick Douglass. He was born a slave, became a leading abolitionist, watched the Civil War, watched Reconstruction, and watched the end of Reconstruction. Did he go home? Did he say, well, that's it, I lost? He did not.
No, he said, get my good side.
But he fought on, and we will too. And we must. So that's our only option.
We must.
Well, we must not continue right now. I'm just so grateful for the now near decade of relationship with you and the ways that you've poured into us and given us so much not wisdom or advice, but guidance and thought partnership.
Love.
Yeah, and outside of the mind, just the ways that you've been like a port in a storm for the both of us and our families has been really beautiful, and I'm very, very grateful for it. So thanks for committing and opting into that relationship.
Hold on, more love for you.
You got to take
it. we there's so much to talk about. We didn't shout out that we collaborated in a way. Want to definitely pump up all of the wonderful work that's happened on Under the Tree, the show that we helped you co-develop.
You did.
Which you can subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts.
But, the media of it aside and, just being so excited that it exists in the world, through that project, you began to work and build this relationship with Malik Aleem, my brother-in-law and, dear ancestor that we love and adore. And the way that you continue and carry his legacy forward is something that I am so eternally grateful and appreciative of, and the way that you shared in the grief with us as a family and provided a haven of, like, you were already pouring in, but in that moment, I was able to turn to you, or we were able to connect in ways that are invaluable. And so I've said it before, but just in this moment where we're recording, this time of being together, thank you so much for creating that space with him. And it's a legacy that we still carry every year on his birthday. Yeah. We play the work. But I think what that meant in terms of how you've connected to our tribe is something that is going to stick with me forever.
Thank you both. All love to Malik Aleem. I'm very moved by what you just said. And let's commit to another decade of arm in arm, shoulder to shoulder, to the next barricade.
Do it.
Sounds good. And we'll have you back on before then, too.
Yeah.
The next decade is good. 10 years from now will be fine.
We
anyway,
love
it's great
you.
to see both of you.
We love
you both.
Bernadine. We love the whole family.
How can folks find you and your work in the ways you want to be found? It's a funny question to ask you.
Well, Under the Tree, a seminar on freedom, is a podcast I started with Malik Aleem under your leadership and guidance. But also, I'm available at billayers.org or underthetree.org or billayers123@gmail.com.
Beautiful.
Anybody wants to write me, here I am.
I like that you kept it at the beginning of the numerals, too, there. You're like, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
We're at AirGo Radio and at Respire Media.
I'm at Damon_AF.
I'm at AirGo Kiss. And we'll be back reshaping culture for the more liberatory and creative.
Much love to the people.
Peace.